the tip of the spear for this kind of a blackout warfare attack would be cyber attack. They would send. They may already have logic bombs installed in the SCADAs, supervisory control and data acquisition systems. These are little computers, the size of a personal computer, that run everything. They control the way electricity flows into electric high voltage transformers, and you could do a temporary blackout by damaging the controls, that regulate the way electricity goes in through these logic bombs to freeze them up. Russia does that to Ukraine every year around Christmas. Now it's only in a temporary blackout that they affect, because you can eventually get control of the controls again. If you defeat the bugs that they have inserted by cyber attacks. But you could permanently black out the state of Florida or the whole country by going into the SCADA transformers, by going into the SCADAs, change the way the electricity flows into the transformers. The electricity has to go into the transformers, the extra high voltage transformers in particular, in the same way all the time. And if you change that, the transformer will eventually burn out, and so you could do that. You could use the SCADAs to change the way the electricity flows into transformers. This is just one example. Or you could change the way the generators spin that generate electricity, or you could do all of these things. The generators have to spin in a certain way all the time in order to generate electricity, but you can change the way they spin by means of the SCADAs and give them commands to spin in a way so that they burn out their bearings and the generators are destroyed.
And sorry, tell me again, what is a SCADA?
The supervisory control and data acquisition system. And it's basically, there was a time when I was growing up, back in the 60s, our grid was run, and all of our utilities were run by blue-collar technicians. You had a guy, sitting in a room watching the flow of electricity into a transformer, or watching the flow of water or natural gas through a pipe, and he would control that. A human being was in the loop controlling that. And but then with the microelectronics revolution in the 1970s, we came up with little computers called SCADAs that could do the job of these blue-collar technicians, and they were replaced. So the hundreds of thousands of people that used to run our critical infrastructures were replaced with these systems. But these systems, we didn't think of our electric grid and other critical infrastructures in terms of national security back in those days. The utilities were able to save a lot of money by firing those employees and replacing them with the SCADAs. So today you can run a whole city, with a dozen people, because of the introduction of SCADAs into our systems. But if the SCADAs are destroyed, or if they destroy big important pieces of equipment, like the generators that produce the electricity, like the extra high voltage transformers, which are the foundations of our modern electronic civilization. We cannot exist as an electronic civilization without these extra high voltage transformers. They were invented by Nikola Tesla, who invented the first electric grid. He invented these transformers. And they are to our civilization what roads and aqueducts were to classical Roman civilization. When these things are destroyed, it's very difficult to replace them. They're extremely expensive. They're the size of a house. They weigh hundreds of tons. There's only 3 railway cars in the whole country that can carry the weight. Bridges have to be reinforced. Roads have to be widened. In the aftermath of an attack that blacked out the whole country and blacked out all the other critical infrastructures like telecommunications, you probably wouldn't be able to replace hundreds of transformers destroyed by a cyber attack or EMP attack or by physical sabotage. But to answer your question, if Russia delivered on its threat to black out Florida, I think they'd probably do it by cyber warfare. That's what their doctrine says. If they were going to go after the whole country, I don't think they'd rely just on cyber. They'd throw the kitchen sink at us. That's just common sense. And they would probably they may already have inserted into our country teams of saboteurs who know where they have to go to actually physically take out, extra high voltage transformers and control centers that have house SCADAs, by means of rocket propelled grenade launchers, release drones carrying non-nuclear EMP weapons that follow the power lines and would black out these transformers. And then the ultimate thing, the last thing, and for taking out the whole country, would probably be a nuclear EMP attack.
So which countries do you think currently have the ability to take out U.S. electrical power? That could do it presently, do it tomorrow if they wanted to?
Well, it depends on what means we're talking about. I think a big sophisticated country would be necessary to do it just by cyber attack. That would be Russia and China. Anybody could do it using special forces. Even a terrorist group, a non-state actor, could do it by special forces. Back in 2013, Mexico was attacked. The Mexican grid, part of the Mexican grid, was blacked out by a drug cartel, a terrorist drug cartel called the Knights Templars. They put about 500,000 people into the dark in the area where their drug operations were located, so they could go into the villages and towns and publicly execute leaders opposed to the drug trade. Now, if Neanderthals like the Knights Templars know how to take down an electric grid, they're just across the border. A terrorist organization could pay these guys $100 million to come across our border and do the same thing to our electric grid and take down the whole country.
And by cyber attack, you mean you're saying China and Russia both could do it via a cyber attack, and that involves no military equipment, no bombs, no missiles, no.
That's right. They have they could do it just by cyber alone. But my book Blackout Warfare has got a chapter by a cyber expert, Dr. Edward Roach, who was a cyber security advisor for the United Nations, and he teaches at Columbia University. And his chapter describes how Russia or China could take down the U.S. electric grid just by cyber attack. But we have
computer hacking.
Yes, by computer hacking, as was done against the Colonial Pipeline by the Russians just a couple of weeks after the threatened invasion of Ukraine in April of 2021. You may recall I was talking about how Russia was threatening, we could black you out selectively or attack the whole nation by cyber warfare. And one of the things they did was the ransomware attack against the Colonial Pipeline. This idea that this was done by Russian hackers independent from the Russian government is nonsense. I mean, Russia is an authoritarian or totalitarian state. These hackers work for the SVR and the GRU, which is Russian military intelligence. They weren't interested in the money. The ransomware attack, the reason it was lifted is because the Biden administration and the utilities that ran Colonial Pipeline ended up paying off the ransomware. I think this was mainly done to demonstrate to Washington that they could deliver on their cyber threats against this country. It wasn't just inconvenience for people trying to get gasoline. That Colonial Pipeline delivered about half, I think it was 45% of all the petroleum to the eastern half of the United States. Our ability to project military power from the East Coast military bases would have been paralyzed if they had done that. You can use cyber to blow up a pipeline, by the way. It wouldn't necessarily be a temporary shutdown of the pipeline.
What do you know about the attack on Iran's nuclear program, which was, my understanding, a cyber attack, which took place, 5 to 10 years ago?
Oh, the Stuxnet worm. Right. That was a U.S. Israeli operation that should have been a black operation. but President Obama couldn't resist talking about it to the New York Times, and so we know a lot of the details.